Social Studies, Unit 7, American Revolution, Chapter 5, The French and Indian War. The big question: how did the British defeat the French and the French and Indian War? A war in the colonies, Washington's small battle against the French, started the French and Indian War. On one side was France, their French colonist in North America, and their Native American allies. On the other side was Great Britain, their British colonist in North America, and their Native American allies. Great Britain and France had been fighting each other on and off for nearly 100 years. No one was surprised that they were at war again. The two European countries had colonies all over the world. Both wanted to control the other's colonies. It was no surprise when the war that began in North America spread to two other continents, in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. In Europe and Asia, the war was called the 7 Years' War. In North America, it was called the French and Indian War. Here we have a drawing of our British king and the French general. Vocabulary: colonel, a high-ranking military official. Parade, a public display of people moving in a long line. Advance, to move forward. Fighting in the woods. The British were determined to take Fort Duquesne and drive the French out of the Ohio River Valley. In 1755, they sent General Edward Braddock with 2,200 soldiers from the British Army to do the job. Eager to join Braddock's army and return to Fort Duquesne, George Washington offered his services to the British general. Braddock appointed the eager young Virginian to the position of colonel. Washington was put in charge of 450 colonial soldiers. Braddock was an experienced general. He knew how to fight wars in Europe, where armies battled on great open fields. He knew very little about fighting a war in the woods of North America. Even worse, he was too stubborn to listen to anyone who did. The first thing Braddock did was order his men to cut a 100-mile-long road through the woods toward Fort Duquesne. His army would march on the road almost as if they were on parade. Colonel Washington knew that building the road was unwise, and his colonists knew about the woods. They warned Braddock that the soldiers should advance with great caution. An attack could come at any moment from anywhere. Braddock ignored their advice. They were only colonists. What did they know about the art of war? A few miles from Fort Duquesne, French soldiers and their Native American allies attacked Braddock's army without warning. They fired from hiding places in the thick woods. The British didn't know what hit them. Their bright red coats made them easy targets. They panicked and ran. General Braddock was killed. Fortunately for the British, George Washington had joined them. Courageously exposing himself to danger, Washington led the remaining British soldiers to safety. Victory for the British. Vocabulary: Prime Minister, the head of the government in some countries. For a time, the French and Indian War went badly for the British elsewhere too. Things began to turn around when William Pitt became the British Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, Pitt was in charge of Great Britain's foreign affairs. This included foreign wars and dealing with the colonies. It was true that the war was being fought around the world, not just in North America. But Pitt knew the American colonies were valuable to Great Britain. He decided that Great Britain must win the war and keep control of its North American lands. If that meant sending more soldiers to North America, Pitt would do it. Waging a war on many continents was expensive, but Pitt was ready to spend whatever was necessary to win. Pitt wanted to win control of two rivers, the St. Lawrence River and the Niagara River. The French used these rivers to send supplies to their soldiers near the Great Lakes and in the Ohio River Valley, including those at Fort Duquesne. If the British could prevent the French from using these rivers, they would soon run out of supplies. Aided by their Native American allies and the American colonists, the British did what Pitt wanted. In addition, British and American forces captured Fort Duquesne. They renamed it Fort Pitt. That is how the city of Pittsburgh eventually got its name. They also captured the French fortress at Louisbourg in Canada. Another part of Pitt's plan was to capture Quebec. The city of Quebec sits atop steep cliffs alongside the the St. Lawrence River. The cliffs protected the city from attack. At least that's what the French thought. One night in September 1759, British soldiers led by General James Wolfe climbed to the top of the cliffs. When dawn broke, the French found the British assembled on a flat area called the Plains of Abraham, ready for battle. The British defeated the French forces and took the city of Quebec. Both Wolfe and the French general Louis Montcalm died in the battle. The British now controlled the St. Lawrence River, and the French had lost. The French and Indian War ended when Great Britain and France signed the Treaty of France in 1763. A peace treaty is an agreement between two or more groups to bring an end to fighting, conflict, or war between themselves. As a part of this peace treaty, France gave all of Canada to Great Britain. France also gave the land it had claimed between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River to Britain. The land west of the Mississippi River was given to Spain, one of France's allies in the war. Spain was, however, forced to give up Florida. How complete was Great Britain's victory? Britain was now the main colonial power in North America. Here's a map of what it looks like, with the purple representing Spanish territory west of the Mississippi River. This yellow is what the French gave over after losing the war. The green are the 13 original colonies. Here we have Florida, which was acquired from Spain, and here we have what already existed as British territory in Canada.